What's up, YouTube? This is Too Raw for TV. All right, so before I get into the video, I want to give a shout out to Aram for his contribution to the channel. Much respect to you, Aram. I'm glad you enjoyed that video I did about Kobe. I want to thank um, everyone that signed to the Patreon so far this month. The link to sign to the Patreon is in the description box below. It's only $2 per month, and over there I'm able to talk about things I can't really talk about on YouTube. I will be uploading at least two videos a day on the Patreon. I did take a 2 day break, a little sabbatical from YouTube. Sometimes I can get a little bit, I don't know, I don't want to say overwhelmed, but sometimes, maybe every 2 or 3 months, I need to take a little break from YouTube, a little 1 or 2 day break, um, just to kind of recharge myself, I guess. So, I just want to finish off this shooting guards thing, okay? So, at number one, of course, I have the greatest uh, Chicago Bulls player and the consensus GOAT, number one shooting guard, Pete Myers. Nah, I'm just joking. No, I'm just joking. Randy Brown. Nah, Jordan. Um, in my opinion, Michael Jordan took the baton from Michael and Larry and helped to push the league to even greater heights in the 90s. This was reflected by uh, record or near record ratings in regular season and playoff and finals games, fan interest in the sport, um, also rising revenues for both owners, franchises, and this also, of course, was reflected in soaring contracts and salaries for NBA players. Um, just an example, when Michael Jordan was a rookie, 1 million a year in salary was substantial. By 1993, that was paltry, damn near what role players made. And you had some guys making 11 or 12 million a year by then. And of course, that dwarfs what guys are making now. I mean, that's dwarfed by what guys are making now. That just tell you how much the NBA had grown in the 1980s. Jordan was a very exciting player to watch, high flying, acrobatics. He had a game where it was predicated on athleticism and high vertical leap, high scorer. But as he got older, it became more well-rounded. Um, as he lost athleticism, he became more grounded, and he transitioned from being Air Jordan to fadeaway Jordan. But ultimately, it didn't matter because he had a Hall of Fame sidekick in Scottie Pippen, and you know also great players around him like Dennis Rodman, Hall of Fame coach Phil Jackson. That led to 6 NBA championships. Um, but since then, however, the Chicago Bulls have been mediocre or awful, with the exception of Derrick Rose Renaissance era. But Jordan does have his detractors. There are some people that think that he hasn't spoke out enough about the plight of Black America. Uh, especially considering the position that he's been in. Being the ambassador to the NBA and being one of the rare Black athletes that transcends color, and that he kind of didn't take advantage of that. Um, you know, and there's some people that think that he just values money over any and everything else, values commerce over principle. But be that as it may, no one can really take away his influence in the game and influence on players. Um, his sheer dominance. He still is number one in points per game in both playoffs and regular season. He's number one in win shares in both playoffs and regular season. Win shares per 48 minutes, I should say. He's number one in points per minute, and career-wise, he's number one in PER career. So he's still a very dominant player when you look at it from a statistical standpoint, um, no matter what Nick Wright says. But Jordan was born in 1963 in Brooklyn, New York, when he was a child, actually a baby. His family moved from New York to North Carolina, where he grew up at. When Michael Jordan was growing up in the late 60s into the 1970s, the NBA was not really broadcast where he was. So the basketball that he mostly watched was college basketball. He grew up idolizing David Thompson. Ironically, he did not like North Carolina, University of North Carolina. Like most black kids in that era, he was a two-sport guy, both baseball and basketball. At that time, in Major League Baseball, you had black stars like Reggie Jackson and Hank Aaron and Willie Mays, Willie Stargell, Dick Allen, who recently passed away. You know, uh, so Jordan gravitated toward baseball initially, but eventually his passion zoomed in on basketball. He had tremendous sibling rivalry growing up. You know, that's one of the hallmark things that people know about him. You read about him. He had tremendous sibling rivalry. Whether you're talking about his sister, I believe her name is Rosalind, from an academic and personal standpoint, or whether you're talking about his brothers, in particular Larry, who was the oldest, I believe, and 5'8", but was kicking everybody's ass in basketball. He was considered the premier athlete of the children. And Larry used to kick Michael's ass in basketball, which probably has something to do with him eventually primarily focusing on basketball. Jordan is known for his borderline psychotic competitive streak, and that's why I've said that the one person I think that compares to Michael when it comes to his competitive nature, um, it's not Kobe per se, although it is Kobe when it comes to basketball. But the person whose personality closely most closely mirrors Michael to me is Ty Cobb when it comes to the competitive nature and also being considered a bit of an asshole. I mean, actually major asshole. Um, there's a lot of similarities there. Of course, Ty Cobb was a seething racist, but you know, Ty Cobb's personality led to the breakup of friendships, of course, marriages, relationships, and there's some similarities there when you read about the both of them. There's that famous story, of course, where Michael found out that he didn't make the junior varsity team, and he cried and said he wanted to quit. His mother Dolores admonished him, saying, "You know, I didn't raise quitters. You're going to keep practicing until you make the team." Blah 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 blah, whatever. So ultimately, he didn't make the team. He grew in height, and he became a star at Laney High. I think his senior year, he averaged something like 29 points and 12 rebounds. So when Jordan went to college, when he received offers, he chose to go to University of North Carolina. Um, there, under the tutelage of Dean Smith and Roy Williams, Jordan's game began to uh, evolve even more so. I believe when Jordan was in high school, he really didn't have that much of a jumper when he was in high school. Maybe, out to maybe 10 feet, but he didn't really have a consistent jumper outside of 10 feet. And when you look at Jordan his rookie year, and then you look at the growth that he had as a player each season, his sophomore than his junior year, you could see his game getting better every year. It almost seems weirdly that he became more athletic, strangely. You know, I don't I believe Jordan ever used PEDs. There's been no evidence of that. But he weirdly seemed to become more athletic. And just his game just became better. I think he said that the moment that gave him his confidence to just go that extra level was when he made this game-winning shot in that championship game, that title game against Georgetown in '82. And you know, when he first came to college, the best players on that team were perceived to be James Worthy and Sam Perkins, and it was marketed like that. Those were the stars, but behind the scenes, it was a different story. It was a different story. Quickly, it became known that Jordan was actually the best player on that team, but this was sort of hidden because he played in that Dean Smith system, and this affected, to a great extent, the expectations of many people of Jordan coming into the NBA. When Jordan was drafted in 1984, most people expected him to be sort of a Michael Finley or Jerry Stackhouse level player, a really, really great player, but not the type of player that you can build a franchise around. Maybe a piece to a championship team, but not the cornerstone. And that was because most people saw him playing in North Carolina. They saw the 17 points a game, which is great, but he wasn't a dominant collegiate player like Oscar Robertson or Kareem or even Wilt. He wasn't dominant like that. Even Bob McAdoo was more dominant in college. But Jordan was a consummate team player. But those who saw him in the Olympics, as far as um, who played with him in the Olympics, I should say, or those who saw him in those exhibition games between the Olympians and the NBA All Stars prior to him being drafted, or those who played with him in UNC in those practices, they saw what the masses didn't see. And it was no shock to them that in his rookie year, he averaged 28.2 points per game to go along with, I believe it was, what was it, 5.9 rebounds and almost, I think, 5 assists per game and almost 2 steals a game. He had a very dominant rookie campaign. And when Jordan came aboard the Chicago Bulls in 1984, the Bulls had been deteriorating quite a bit. They had their heyday in the 1970s when they were in the Western Conference. The team that had Norm Van Leer and Chet Walker and Bob Love and Tom Boerwinkle, um, Jerry Sloan. That team was perennially in the playoffs. Sometimes would get to the conference finals, definitely the second round. But that team aged out. Then they had their run with Artis Gilmore, where they really weren't that good. But now the Bulls, this team had guys like Sidney Green, um, Orlando Woolridge. Uh, who else is on that team? Um, can't think of his name right now. Quentin Daly. Reggie Theus had just left. They were not a really good team. And one of the problems that was permeating the NBA permeated the Chicago Bulls. That was drug usage. And a lot of those guys, they were more interested in playing just good enough to justify their contracts and have in the nightlife. You know the the whole attitude with the Bulls was different. Like the culture. It was no winning culture. It was nothing about that. So Jordan didn't quite fit in. He was different. At that time, Jordan didn't drink. He didn't smoke. He didn't do any of that shit. Not at first. So he didn't quite fit in, with that that mentality at first. So once management realized they had the star player on their hands, they had to kind of build a team around him. And this was unusual because at that time, the consensus was that number one, scoring champions don't win titles. Jordan was a player that was on the verge of being the league's best scorer. Okay, the only scoring champions to win titles were Kareem Abdul-Jabbar '71 and George Mikan with the Minneapolis Lakers, and those were centers. That's another thing. You usually build a team around a big man, which is one of the reasons why Jordan was drafted third and Sam Boyd was drafted ahead of Jordan. But Jordan was changing the perceptions of how you built a championship team. Before you had to have a great center, you had to have a great big man. Remember that was the missing formula for the Sixers when they got Moses Malone. That put them over the top, made them a dominant team. The best center Jordan ever played with was Bill Cartwright. So he changed that perception. Now Jordan was individually exciting to watch, but the Bulls were slowly getting better. Slowly. And, it was a process. It wasn't like with Magic or Larry where they were instantly title contenders. This was a slower process. Some of it was because Jordan was a shooting guard. Um, a lot of it had to do with the fact that the team around him just wasn't the. I mean, look, some people say, "Oh, well, Jordan lost his first 9 of his first 10 playoff games." Jordan, oh man, why couldn't they get over the hump? Well, Jordan didn't have initially Hall of Fame teammates like James Worthy and Robert Parrish and Nate Archibald and Kevin McHale. I mean, are we being serious? You know, the best player he played with before Scottie Pippen was a decrepit George Gervin. That's the best player he played with. So Doug Collins became the coach in the '86 offseason. This was after Jordan broke his foot in '85, which led to him missing 64 games. Jordan came back, had a fight with management about how many minutes he would play, and in the '86 playoffs, with diminished restriction removed, Jordan was able to torch the Boston Celtics for nearly 44 points a game, including a 63-point game in Game 2, where he nearly beat the Boston Celtics by himself, the greatest Celtic team in the history of that franchise. In '86-'87, with Doug Collins as coach, Jordan was let loose to average 37 points a game. And um, it was there, it was that season where Jordan went from being, in my opinion, an all-star to superstar, like mega superstar. It was already by his third season that some people were already saying, just in his third year, that Jordan was going to be the greatest player to ever play the game. He did have his detractors, of course. Some people said he didn't make people around him better. And their scoring champions, like I said before, can't win titles. Plus, the wins weren't really there. That year they won 40 games. That's 500. You know, but they're still not a great team yet. They're barely making the playoffs. So next year they get Scottie Pippen and Horace Grant. They're, you know, they're a work in progress. They didn't come right into the NBA and dominate. And I think it can be said that it's true that Jordan never won without Scottie, but Scottie Pippen never would have became Scottie Pippen without playing Jordan. Nor would Horace Grant have become the player he did without playing with Mike. So both things are true. And then finally, you know, in a move that Jordan didn't like at the time, the Bulls traded Charles Oakley for Bill Cartwright. Their thinking was, well, Horace Grant will be an upside because even though Charles is a great rebounder and an enforcer and defensive player, Horace Grant will give us more scoring. He's younger. He kind of can replicate the rebounding. We need more scoring at the center position. Dave Corzine was a cut. So ultimately, they got Bill Cartwright. Jordan didn't like this trade. Oakley was close with Jordan. And also, I think that this trade had something to do with the Jordan rules. Prior to Oakley being traded, Jordan used to kill the Detroit Pistons. 59 points, 61 points, 47 points, 46 points, 39 points. I mean, multiple big games from Jordan. But without that enforcer and tough guy, and these young neophytes replacing him, these tenderonis, I don't mean that in a sexual sense. I mean that like psychologically they were tender, they were young, they were, you know, they weren't used to being in these situations. They could be intimidating. The Detroit Pistons saw the soft, you know, they saw the soft underbelly, which was Scottie Pippen and Horace Grant, and they devised the Jordan rules. Jordan's the one guy we got to worry about. The rest of these guys, you know what I'm saying, they can't, we can just intimidate these motherfuckers, beat up Jordan. The rest of these guys, we can just intimidate the hell out of them. That's how we'll win these games. And the Detroit Pistons did, in my opinion, temporarily set back the coronation of King Michael. You know, to the point where it was rumored that Jordan was contemplating retirement if he couldn't win a title by the time he was 30 years old. You know, but ultimately the Bulls got better. Pippen got better. Horace Grant got better. They toughened up. They matured, and the Bulls steadily closed the gap on the Detroit Pistons to the point where they overtook them during the 1991 season and ultimately won the title that year. They repeated in '92, and they did something that no team had done in what, a quarter of a century at that time, which was three-peat. No team had done that since 1966. They achieved that in 1993. Jordan retired before the start of the 1993-94 season, citing burnout. His father had, of course, been murdered in 1993 summer. And Jordan went on to play minor league baseball for the Birmingham Barons. And without Michael Jordan, the Chicago Bulls were not a championship caliber team. Now, the Bulls did acquire the team that were going to win titles in the late 90s. They did acquire some of the components. The older guys like like John Paxson were gone, but in comes Steve Kerr. They finally acquired Tony Kukoc. They got Luke Longley. Later on, they would get Randy Brown, Ron Harper, Judd Bushler. They would get all of these pieces that they needed to win a championship. You know, the players around them got, the players, the role players got better. Is what I'm trying to say. All right. So the Bulls in '94 won 55 games. And some people like to use it as a metric to say, hey, see, this is how you know Jordan's overrated. They won 57 games in 93, but only 55 games in 94. But what they don't realize is that the team was drastically different. Outside of Pippen and Horace Grant, the team was drastically improved. In 93, that bench was depleted. It was old. It was almost a completely different team by 1994. You know what I'm saying? In 94, 95, Horace Grant had left, and that left a gaping hole in the paint as far as rebounding and defense, and that was felt throughout the entire season to the point where at one point the Bulls were under 500. The comeback Michael Jordan, he comes back, comes out of retirement, and it was up and down that little brief period of time he played during the regular season. And but he did lead the Bulls to a 13-4 finish. They make it as a sixth seed in the playoffs, but ultimately they lost to the Orlando Magic. But this led to Jordan working harder than ever to try to get back to the top of the NBA. And in 1995-96, he led the Chicago Bulls to a 72-10 record. He won his then record eighth scoring title, and the Chicago Bulls went on to win their fourth title that year. The Bulls would go on to win another title in 1997, and their last title, their sixth, in 1998. Jordan retired in January of 1999, and that seemed to be the end of his career. But ultimately, Jordan would come back for two more seasons playing with the Washington Wizards. While it was not successful as far as team success, when you consider his age, when you consider the multitude of injuries he had dealt with, consider the fact that he had to lose 40 pounds to get back into playing shape, I think he did rather well. You know what I'm saying? He did rather well, and he finally got that proper send off that he, really didn't get in 1998. He kind of got a send off in 1998, but you know, Jordan admitted that he did not really want to retire in '98. He wanted to keep playing, and but ultimately, Jordan is one of the great players in NBA history. For his career, he averaged 30.12 points per game, which is marginally ahead of Wilt Chamberlain. His 33.4 points per game easily leads all time in playoffs. He had 8 career 50-point games in playoffs, twice more than anybody else. And he was a 5-time league MVP, 9 times all defensive first team. And what else? I think he was I believe he's a 13-time. No, I believe he's a 13-time All Star or 14-time All Star. One of the two. I don't have a list ahead of me. I'm just going off my memory. So I believe he scored 32,292 points in his career. One of the things that I do wonder about Jordan is you wonder what could have been. Even as great as his career was, you wonder about what could have been. You wonder, you know, had he played as long as a Karl Malone, what his numbers would have been. I believe he would have had over 40,000 points. He'd be probably the all-time leader in steals. He would his numbers would be so much more gaudy, you know, than what they are already. He was a two-time Olympic champion, or a two-time gold medal Olympian, 1984 and 1992. Of course, part of probably the greatest Olympic team ever assembled, the '92 Dream Team. So he was a 6-time Finals MVP. Just a very just unbelievable achievements and numbers. 10-time scoring champion, led the NBA in steals 3 times. 1988 Defensive Player of the Year. So that's pretty much all I got to say. Tell me what you guys think.